Feminist ethics and care ethics. Although there is no unique, positive theory of feminist ethics, its general project starts in part from a critique of traditional ethical theories, especially of deontology and utilitarianism. This criticism itself is multifaceted. Some of it has to do with gendered norms, the focus on the individual rather than community, and the portrayal of the moral agent as a non-emotional, logically ideal reasoner. One influential type of feminist ethics came to be known under the label of care ethics, or ethics of care. The core idea of care ethics is that the right action is the action performed out of care for all those involved. Feminist work on care ethics shifted the focus of ethics from relations between citizens or strangers to close relationships rooted in emotional attachments, including friends, lovers, mothers, and children. In those intimate relationships, it has been argued, the parties respond to each other as unique individuals, not merely as typical human beings. In addition, personal relationships are said not to be always reciprocal, and according to a care ethicist, this must be taken into account in moral decision-making. Feminist ethical philosophers aim to identify and characterize virtues and values suitable to everyday sociability. Although they don't deny the importance of rational calculation of consequences in evaluating actions, they see trust, empathy, and emotional responsiveness as vital to moral judgment. The central notion of this ethical framework is that of care, which is seen as a species of activity that includes everything we do to maintain, contain, and repair our world so that we can live in it as well as possible. This world includes our bodies, ourselves, and our environment. Now, because it depends upon contextual considerations, care is notoriously difficult to define. The definition just provided is not generally accepted, but it has the advantages of allowing for cultural variation and extended beyond family and domestic spheres because it is that general. So very often care is defined as a general practice, but the concept can be further analyzed in other subcomponents, which can also be understood as substages or goals. The first stage is that of attentiveness, which is a certain disposition to become aware of the need of someone in the environment. Then another stage or component of care is responsibility, which denotes the willingness to respond and take care of the perceived need. Then there is the component of competence, which refers to the skill of providing good and successful care. And finally, there is the component or stage of responsiveness, which refers to the consideration of the position of others as they see it and recognition of the potential for abuse in care. Care remains a contested concept because it contains ambiguities that some claim are advantageous and others claim that stand in the way of providing practical guidance on moral decision-making. So while some ethicists define care as both an emotional state and an activity, which centers around interaction and dependency, other definitions make more room for the notion of self-care in addition to care of others. Yet other definitions define care as a virtue or motive, which turns care ethics into a type of virtue ethics. Many problems have been raised for care ethics. Many of them are conceptual, such as the question of care ethics being a distinct ethical framework. Many have pointed out that because care ethics incorporates liberal concepts such as autonomy, equality, and justice, care ethics cannot be neatly distinguished from other ethical frameworks like deontology or utilitarianism. Others have pointed out that care ethics tends to be overly parochial. That means that the concern expressed here is that without a broader sense of justice, care ethics may allow for favoritism towards one family and friends. Another conceptual problem for care ethics is that it seems to be deeply ambiguous. Like virtue ethics, care ethics is often accused of being unnecessarily ambiguous, failing to offer concrete guidance for ethical action. There have been responses, some care ethicists pointing out that this non-principled nature of care ethics is overstated, and that by discussing contextualized principles, care ethics can provide practical guidance. Finally, some have criticized care ethics for being a type of slave morality, because it tends to make subservient traits into virtues. So some critics have argued that to the extent that care ethics encourages care without further inquiring as to who is caring from whom and whether these relationships are just, it provides an unsatisfactory base for a fully liberating ethics. But the four ethical frameworks presented in this module, virtue ethics, deontology, utilitarianism, and care ethics, all have their strengths. They also have their weaknesses. Our task will not be to decide which is the right moral theory. That's why I left the objections to each moral framework at the stage of a question, an open question at that. What we will focus on is whether the actions biotechnology makes possible are or aren't morally acceptable. And for this task, we will be at liberty to use all the four ethical frameworks. And indeed, any other considerations that seems to apply so long as we have a good argument for applying it to a specific context.